Hi, my name is Nacho, welcome back to our channel. And have you ever stopped and think that perhaps you've been watching movies wrong? Well, it turns out that the success of Helldivers 2, a game about a bunch of soldiers dropping on a planet to kill bugs, revived an old discourse about Starship Troopers, a movie about a bunch of soldiers dropping on a planet to kill bugs, and whether or not that movie is a fascist allegory. I wish I was kidding. Okay, let's first set up a foundation. Starship Troopers was originally a sci-fi novel written by Robert A. Heinlein in a few weeks in reaction to the US suspending nuclear testing. It is considered one of the most influential pieces of science fiction along with the works of Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. Set up in a futuristic society ruled by the Terran Federation, a world government managed by military veterans where the only way to obtain citizenship is through military service. This is also necessary to do things like voting, being able to have kids, or become a politician. Those who do not perform this service though retain the rights of free speech and assembly but cannot vote or hold public office. That's the basic premise of the book, which had so many innovating ideas that it basically inspired almost all the modern sci-fi action stories that we have nowadays. You know power armors? From like everything? They can all trace back their origins back to this book. Fast forward to 1997, director Paul Verhoeven, who didn't finish the book because he found it too boring, we're off to a great start, directed what is probably one of the better aged sci-fi action movies from before Y2K. Ed Neumeyer, the writer of RoboCop, helped with the screenplay, and they remain fairly consistent with the books in terms of names and events, with certain changes that we'll touch on in a moment. When I say that this movie has an age, boy do I mean that. It looks better than most modern film nowadays. My favorite thing is looking at the behind the scenes from the special effects team, which I've watched a couple times now. This movie is 27 years old, and be able to look back on the days where practical effects as well as CGI fused themselves to give the most immersive shots you could possibly see back then. The spaceships were all handcrafted, the bugs were modeled. You could barely notice the CGI in large-scale scenes like the Whiskey Outpost defense, but that didn't take away from the rest of the film. Cast-wise, there's some huge talents like Michael Ironside, Neil Patrick Harris, Clancy Brown as supporting characters, and probably one of the hottest lineups of leads with Casper Van Dien, Dina Meyer, and Denise Richards, which granted don't provide any Oscar-winning performances, but fuck me do they look good doing it. And it's a fun movie. There's guns, there's starships, there's nonsensical full frontal attacks where hundreds of soldiers die, which is probably due to the lacking of the one thing that's very prominent in the books, which are the power armors, which didn't get included in the film because of budget restraints. Shame. But there's hot chicks.
Oh my.
Fuck. You've got the roughnecks.
Roughnecks!
Some people die heroic deaths, some don't, and it has a happy ending, sort of. Don't have to think much about it. It had some less than stellar sequels that didn't carry the same weight, but they were still kinda good, so you can watch them, see if you like them. But what is it about this movie that has everyone's underwear up in a twist?
Would you like to know more?
It turns out that the setting this movie takes place has spawned the argument that the people who we paint as the good guys, the human race, are indeed a fascist society.
Oh no. Anyway.
Which is not entirely wrong. That's one of the main criticisms that the author received when he published the book, based on how much he idolized the concept of a full military society bent only on the idea of war. When it comes to the author, Heinlein was a firm libertarian and was defended by a lot of other authors to the fact that he would never support fascism. Now when it comes to the movie, the themes of authoritarianism and the wink-wink fascism were heavily satirized by the director, who is a Dutchman who lived during Nazi-occupied times in the Netherlands. Remember when I said that he didn't finish the book? That's one of the reasons why. And the movie is not exactly subtle when it comes to that. The infomercials jump to mind, painting the war as good, inciting the people to join, and who can forget the iconic line, "I'm doing my part," with a little kid in full infantry gear jumping out of the line and everyone having a big laugh. Yeah, war, fun. It's all meant to stand out as absolutely ridiculous. Now, you and me,
Hello there.
people with an IQ above room temperature who understand nuance to a certain degree will see that and think, huh, that's kinda funny, and move on till we get to the shower scene and pause for a considerable amount of time. However, not everyone's like that, and the people over at Twitter, started talking how heavily depicted the idea of an authoritarian regime is, having the good guys dressed as an SS officer, making everyone who liked this movie a Nazi. And if you fail to see that, you are media illiterate. And because the good guys are fascists and warmongers, that makes the bugs the victims.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
So while looking into the topic, I run into this thread of a guy who ironically calls himself Victims of Capitalism Memorial Foundation. I wonder if these are some sent from my iPhone tweets, who broke down in very specific fashion why this movie is a fascist allegory with examples like this. It's clear throughout the film that Earth and its interplanetary colonies live under a global fascist order ruled by the Citizen Federation, whose explicit aim is to colonize and control the entire galaxy. True. However, there's a reason for this. In the books, this political structure arose after the collapse of the 20th century Western democracies, driven in part by their inability to control crime. I'm just gonna leave that one there. This is humanity gone mad under fascism and settler colonialism. Executions air live on all stations, pundits screaming at each other in the wake of major defeat resulting from their attacks on the box, wall-to-wall unhinged war propaganda, and a galactic crisis of legitimacy. This is a fictional world. The director himself lampooned the fascist regime, depicting what would happen in a perfectly unachievable extreme right-wing society. I'm explicitly explaining this is a satire of a fascist propaganda in America and Nazi Germany. I dressed up one of the characters in an intentional manner to evoke a Nazi. He said that if you see a black uniform and you think it's bad, then you very much agree with the people who make this film. The film makes clear through propaganda newsreels that Klendathu orbits twin stars with a large asteroid belt. The asteroid that hits Buenos Aires is said to have been shot by bug plasma, but we never see the bugs actually firing it, so it's not clear they are responsible. Again, the bugs are the victims. How about you take a propaganda of these nuts? The theory that the attack on Buenos Aires was a false flag deliberately made by the government to incite people into war is going around. There's also one that says that the bugs actually did it, and because you can't aim an asteroid, it was unlikely to hit a military target, and we kinda needed Rico to be in the fight, so for plot conveniences, it hit his hometown, spawning the phrase, "the only good bug is a dead bug," and mobilizing the troops.
But how can a bug shoot an asteroid?
I don't know, bro. There's probably some creative out there who can figure out a way they can do it. The point is, the war was inevitable. Eventually the bugs would find human planets and try conquering them, because they need the land as much as humans do. If I remember correctly, they are able to invade other worlds by putting colonies on top of asteroids and shooting them at planets. They also continue evolving up until the point where they can control a person's brain and body by being inside of them, like they did in the sequel. Now, that's not exactly what you would call a diplomatic mutation, isn't it? So the idea of bugs being aware of the humans and wanting a piece of Earth doesn't really fall far from possible. To wrap up this part, my favorite response is someone saying, "Good thread, I hope the author is not crazy," and the reply is the dude saying how relevant this movie is to the war in Ukraine and Palestine and the decline of fascist Western society.
You're a moron.
This movie is 30 years old, dude. Take a fucking chill pill. I believe that the tweet that reignited this flame is the one of the guy saying how he wouldn't sympathize with the brain-eating bug, because let's be honest, that's a face only a mother could love, and the lefty frat boy who respond that the disgust of something you don't comprehend is a tale of the xenophobic seed from which fascism proliferates.
You keep using the word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
It's a bug that eats human brains. If it was real, I would feed him yours. But that would probably serve as nothing more than an appetizer to it. Warhammer and ST fans embracing alien genocide good, despite that being the opposite theme of the series they claim to like. Yes, let's instead befriend the space-killing arachnids. My favorite reaction to all of this is a guy saying that this film is a very effective litmus test for identifying those who are beyond saving. If this wasn't a work of fiction, and you side with the men killing bugs, just because you don't want to be associated with the guys wearing black, you kinda deserve to be torn apart. Or at least, not be allowed to vote. These are the same people who try to befriend the aliens from Independence Day. But like I said, you don't need to be a 200 IQ individual to see this as nothing more than an action film set in a fake futuristic society that's fighting giant bugs, with obviously exaggerated fake propaganda to paint the war in a colorful way. Saying that this movie fails as satire and that anyone who likes it is a fascist is like watching a porn film all the way to the end to see if they eventually get married. And look, I'm not big into politics. I had to go and read what libertarianism is, jingoism, fascism, Marxism, all the isms, to understand why people are so upset about a movie that's probably older than they are. And you can't say this movie is fascist after what the author said, what the director said, how freedoms are not fully taken away from people in this fake utopian society, and how, for example, in the face of a military failure, the leader of the Federation steps down to be replaced by a black woman, just like they did in Germany back in 1945. The way I see it, we live in a society that's so divided and loves to romanticize their political leniencies. Thank you, social media. And the way I understood it, fascism is an extremely far-right form of politics. But even if you are mildly old-fashioned, it doesn't matter how little on the right side of the spectrum you think you are. There are people so far down the left that no matter what, they will always see the people across from them and everything they do as fascist. To me, Starship Troopers is not a bad film. It has some less than stellar sequels and is missing some key elements that would have been good to see in a live action. There's a Japanese animated film that has them though. But it's a classic. It trumps over the vast majority of movies we have nowadays, and it's a statement to when films were made with effort and thought and not just a checklist. Do I think it's a fascist loving story? Nah. Do I care? No. Why? Boobies. And because it was well made and the message is clear, it doesn't brainwash me into thinking that war is good, because thanks to this book and this movie, we got Fallout. And in Fallout, war never changes. But if you watch this far into it, really use a like. Thank you so much to my supporters over at Coffee, you guys are great. Check out this video next if you haven't heard about the worst Spider-Man movie ever made. Let me know in the comments down below the real question presented in this movie. Are you Team Carmen or Team Dizzy? As always, I've been Nacho. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.